Welcome to the Lakers Nation newsfeed. My name is Trevor Lane, senior writer for LakersNation.com. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Today we're going to be talking about the latest Paul George rumor, and it is not a good one for Lakers fans. But first, today's show is brought to you by Simple Contacts. Head over to simplecontacts.com/LakersNation, and you'll get $30 off your next order of contact lenses. You can do it online. It's very, very easy. Again, simplecontacts.com/LakersNation. Okay, so this latest Paul George rumor suggests that George is in fact going to stay with the Oklahoma City Thunder, which would be a big blow to the Los Angeles Lakers, who for a long time have been planning on having enough cap space this coming summer to offer a max contract to George and LeBron James in the hopes of landing two max players in one summer and instantly vaulting back into contender status. So here's where the report comes from. It comes from Dean Blevins of News 9 in Oklahoma City. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But here is his direct quote, and I am getting this quote. Got to give a little hat tip here to dailythunder.com. They're the ones who actually found this. But here's what he said. Dean Blevins says, allegedly, apparently, Paul George plans to stay with the Thunder. I know it's not what people believe, but in separate conversations, I'm told Paul George's agent has told people associated with the NBA that Paul George believes the injury loss of Andre Robertson was huge and he's staying. Blevins then says, disclaimer though, believing everything that agents allegedly say can be dangerous to your health. So, obviously, first and foremost, not a great rumor to hear for Lakers fans because the Lakers, of course, would like to sign Paul George, would like to bring him back home to Southern California. And this was the danger of not trading for Paul George last summer or not giving the Indiana Pacers enough to make them send him to the Lakers. Is that you could wind up with a scenario like this where George goes to Oklahoma City, falls in love there, and winds up staying. And then you miss out on landing that player. But there's a few things that we need to discuss that should make us take this rumor with a giant grain of salt. Okay, first of all, free agency doesn't begin until July 1st. I'm recording this on May 23rd. By the time you listen to this, it's probably May 24th. So you've got a month and a half almost until free agency even starts. What are the odds that Paul George really has his mind totally made up at this point? Probably not high. I mean, he probably has some ideas in his head. He's not telling anybody, but he probably has some ideas in his head about what he would like to do this summer, what he'd like to do with free agency. But at this point, he has not sat down with any of these other teams or anything like that. So the likelihood of him completely having his mind made up is probably not very high. The other thing, Dean Blevins, I'm not going to question his credibility or anything. I'm sure he has talked to some people, but Dean Blevins is not Woj. This is not a Woj bomb. This is not Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN reporting things, who is the gold standard in basketball reporting. This is not Zach Lowe. This is not Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, who has some great stuff. Okay, this is a local news guy. I mean, this is not going to be the same type or the same level of story that you're going to hear from a guy like Woj, where you basically have to assume that what he's saying is factual and it's happening. Again, I don't think that Blevins is just making this up. I'm sure he is hearing these things, but I'm saying it's not going to have that same credibility as if it was coming from a guy like Woj. Here's the other thing, though. Why Andre Robertson? That part of it does not have the ring of truth to it. Not saying that Andre Robertson is a bad basketball player, because he's not. He's a good basketball player. But is he really the kind of guy that makes you sit back and think, oh, man, if he had just been healthy, this team could have really been something. Now, if Andre Robertson was a different wing, if he was, say, Jimmy Butler, somebody like that's on like an all-star level, sure, it would make a lot of sense. Paul George saying, you know what, we didn't have that guy, and we want to give it a shot with him in the fold. We think we can be a lot better. That's not Andre Robertson. He's a great defender, right? And he's made a name for himself in the league as a defender, but he's coming off of a knee injury, and he's more in the mold of a role player. So Paul George basing his decision to stay on this notion that Andre Robertson would fix everything with the Thunder and they would suddenly be a contender, that just doesn't have the ring of truth to it as well. So we have to take this rumor with a huge grain of salt. But let's suspend disbelief for a moment here, and let's talk about what this would mean for the Lakers if he does indeed decide to stay in Oklahoma City. Let's say this turns out to be true. Blevins is right on, and his sources are on the money, and we are in this dystopian future where Paul George has decided not to come to the Los Angeles Lakers. What does that mean for Los Angeles? Well, the Lakers still had or will have more cap space than any team in the league heading into this offseason. That will not change. So they can still do a lot of things with that cap space. One effect of this is that Julius Randle would likely stay, because the only scenario where the Lakers really would lose Julius Randle is if they were getting 2 max stars, and we're talking about LeBron James and Paul George in this summer's free agency. So Julius Randle probably sticks around. Maybe the Lakers let him go find his own offer. Maybe the Mavericks make him an offer. That's been a rumor. And then the Lakers match it. But it becomes much less likely that the Lakers don't match on Julius Randle if Paul George is not coming to town. It also means the Lakers probably don't ship out Luol Deng. Because if they're not in a scenario where they're getting 2 max stars, then you don't really have that incentive to pay another team to take on Luol Deng's contract. So with that being the case, they probably just let another year get burned off of Luol Deng's deal, and then you try to move him again next summer when it will cost you less to do it. Now, it's also possible that if the Lakers are in that scenario and Deng realizes that they don't have to trade him, maybe he's willing to give back a little bit more in a buyout scenario, and something like that can happen. But again, that's kind of just guessing at this point. The incentive to actually do something with Deng's contract is less if the Lakers aren't getting 2 max stars, which they would not be if Paul George is not coming to town. Now, it's also a tougher sell to LeBron James. If you're going to LeBron James and you're saying, hey, we're going to contend in the West with you and Lonzo and Brandon Ingram and the rest of the kids that are good but haven't really proven anything in the playoffs, that's a tougher sell than saying, hey, LeBron, you're going to come play with Paul George plus all of these young pieces that really showed a lot last season. That is a little bit easier to sell to LeBron, not saying that the Lakers are the favorites to land him or anything, but it becomes a more difficult sell to a guy like LeBron James if you don't have Paul George in the fold. So that would be another effect of the Lakers not landing Paul George. And then maybe they decide, since they've got all this cap room, if they can't get LeBron and they can't get Paul George, maybe they start to look at some alternative options. And we're talking about guys like DeMarcus Cousins, DeAndre Jordan are some of the other players that are out there. You've got Aaron Gordon, who I think is a really intriguing candidate, but he is a restricted free agent, so that makes things a little more complicated. And it's possible they also just re-sign some of their own free agents, guys like Brook Lopez and Isaiah Thomas, and then run it back out there with this group. Also, having that much cap space available could make them be pretty aggressive on the trade market. They can absorb a lot of salary. And they could use that to either absorb bad contracts for another team and pick up assets by doing that. We've seen them do that in the past. They did it with Jose Calderon most recently and picked up a couple of second rounders for doing that. It was the same thing with the Jeremy Lin trade years ago. So they could look to go that route, or they could work a trade that would bring some talent in and some new pieces for them to build around. So there's a lot they could still do there. There's a lot of flexibility when you have the kind of cap space that the Lakers will have. But again, I don't want to present this in the wrong way. Paul George deciding to stay with the Oklahoma City Thunder would definitely be a bad thing for the Lakers, because we know they definitely want to sign him. They definitely want to bring him back home, and he would be a phenomenal fit with this young Lakers team. So again, though, this rumor is one that we need to take with a big grain of salt, but still not the kind of thing that you want to hear, but nothing to freak out just yet over either. Let's wait until July comes before we really start to lose our minds over whether or not Paul George is coming, because most likely he probably doesn't know at this point. All right, and until he gets in a room with Magic Johnson smiling at him and he says, no, sorry, I'm not coming to Los Angeles, which I think that's going to be really hard to do, we can't assume that he's just not going to come to the Lakers. We need that final definitive answer before we jump to any conclusions. So again, not a pleasant rumor to hear about, but is what it is, and it's kind of this time of year that we're going to hear things like this coming out. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something within the next week or so saying that he is coming to the Lakers, because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of agents and team personnel that like to kind of play these kind of games with rumors. That's going to about wrap things up for now. Again, Find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, and make sure you head over to LakersNation.com for all the latest breaking Lakers news. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. See ya.